Northstradamus strikes again. I predicted the boot of Survivor 48 episode 5 weeks before it happened when I said this.
If I had to pick one person out of everyone in this whole swap that I think is going to get voted out, it's probably going to be Bianca.
And I was right. Oh, it feels so good. But this episode has so many implications for the future of this season that although I got many wins this week, my contender rankings for the future have been completely radical. So I'm going to have to put in extra work to see what my predictions will be moving into Mergatory week of Survivor 48. But before we get to the contender rankings, we first have to go over general thoughts and Edgic ratings for the episode. If you don't know how an Edgic chart works, basically there are 3 parts to an Edgic rating. The first part is the type of edit. You can either be UTR for under the radar, you didn't see very much of them, MOR for middle of the road, you saw a little bit of them but it wasn't that fleshed out, CP for complex personality, you saw a lot of that character in this episode and it was well fleshed out, or OTT, you saw way too much of this person. The second part is the tone of that character's edit. It can either be P for positive, N for negative, M for mixed, a little bit of both, or just no letter at all in the rating for just no tone, neutral edit. And finally, the number in the square is just a visibility scale of 1 to 5 of how much you saw them in the episode. 1 for you barely saw them at all, 5 for you saw an absolute ton of them. So let's hop into the general thoughts for this episode. As I said, Bianca was, of course, voted out, and I knew it. I knew this was going to happen. I really felt that Bianca gave big swap screw energy. Now, I said last week that I was shocked to see that Thomas went out before Bianca. I did not see that coming at all. That was definitely a big surprise to me, but I still thought it still feels like Bianca is going to be voted out in this swap. I still felt like Bianca's edit was giving pre-merge energy to me, and she just seemed totally like a swap screwed personality. Now, this is just about the edit. Okay, this is not about Bianca as a person or a character. I enjoyed Bianca a lot. I think she seems great. I think she was super fun, especially in this episode. I loved what she was doing, but I gotta say, I felt like what they were showing us and how they were editing her in the show definitely felt like this was the spot for her to go out. And I also felt like this episode, there were some interesting decisions made in how the boot was portrayed, because we did not see really anything leading up to Bianca's vote. It was a big blindside. It seemed like it was supposed to be between Say and Chrissy, and then it was Bianca. Now, to me, I actually predicted it was going to be Bianca. Obviously, I predicted it weeks ago, but even during the episode, I said as the votes were being cast, I was like, I think this is all a smokescreen, and I think Cedric and Chrissy are going to vote for Bianca, and that is exactly what happened. And the reason why I predicted that is because I felt like this was such a big visibility spike for Bianca. She has not gotten a ton of visibility up to this point, and this was a huge episode for her. And so I was like, either this is her Genevieve waking up arc, and she's gonna, be a big character from now on, or she's probably going out this episode. And the reason why I really thought she was going out this episode is, to me, I felt like the Chrissy plan kind of went by the wayside. I didn't really think it was possible, because Mitchie probably wasn't going to flip on Chrissy. We had no signs or indication in the edit that would happen. So really, to me, the options became at the end of the episode, it's either going to be Cedric flips on Say, or somehow this is a crazy Bianca blindside. And the Say getting voted out idea just did not feel very likely to me, because Say has been such a massive, massive character so far in the season, and I feel like this did not give Say boot energy to me. She did not have that big of an edit. I did not believe that Say would be voted out this time, so I thought it has to be Bianca. It could be Chrissy edit-wise, but strategy-wise, I didn't see how it would be. And so I felt like the only option that makes any sense here is that is a big blindside on Bianca, and it was. So that is how it goes here with Bianca. I also had some predictions. I predicted that Eva would struggle in the challenge and that Joe would come and help her in some way based off of the previews and commercials that we got in the past week. And so I got that right as well. I felt like I had a lot about this episode that I got right. Not a ton of surprises. There were a few surprises this episode. Obviously, the Star and Eva connection was something I did not really see coming, and definitely brings in some questions about those two story moving forward. And say giving Eva the idol was crazy. I did not expect that. And also, I felt like the scene that was the coming together of the new Vula 4 was very interesting. I did not totally expect that to happen based on the way the previews were showing us and whatnot. However, I did think, before the swap, before last week's episode when Thomas was eliminated, that I felt like that group would really come together. I felt like those were a lot of the people that were being painted as main characters in the season at this point and really tight allies. And I felt like that group, if they don't go to council, they're going to stick together, and that could be a really dominating force moving forward. And so then when the Thomas boot happened, it definitely drew that prediction into question. But then it seemed like they overcame that and came together anyways. And this episode is kind of what I predicted to happen before. And I think that this 4 could be a really important force moving forward. I think that new Vula 4 is being set up for success moving forward. And my prediction is that they are going to bring in Eva with her connection to Joe and Shaheen, and bring in David with his connection to Kyle and Camilla. And obviously we've seen explicitly in the edit shown that David and Eva have been making a connection on the swap. There's a reason why we've seen that, and I think that that is going to come together and form a 6. We even saw in the preview David linking up with Joe. We saw Kyle linking up with Eva, and I think that that is going to form a new 6, and that 6 is most likely going to be, if not dominating the season, a really important puzzle piece moving forward. There's just been so much focus on those 6 characters and the relationships between those 6 people that I think that the winner so far is looking like it's probably going to come from that group. But as I said, I'm going to have a few major things that are going to change, necessarily that being exactly the fact when we get to the contender rankings. I also think this episode had interesting implications for the theme of honesty that I talked about last week, in that I feel like honesty is the best policy is something that is cooking to become a theme throughout the season. And there's a lot of moments of that again in this episode. Obviously, we have the big moment with Eva where she kind of comes out about her circumstances and how this was treated so positively and people were so receptive to it. And there's this big positive moment, and it won out for Eva. She ended up being awarded an idol because people were so kind of impassioned to her because of it. So win for her. I think a win for Star. Star was kind of emboldened to want to share her idol, her Beware advantage with the group. She said that she wanted to play a clean game, and that means being honest. And so she came out about her secret of the Beware advantage, and it ended up getting solved. So again, a win for honesty. I think we also look at the new Vula tribe, where they all decided how we saw specific conversations about how Joe talks about, oh, Kyle, I was totally honest with you, and you see how there's, dissonance there now. And they talk about how they still want to move forward, even though they kind of had this dishonesty within the group. And then when they do open up and they share their honesty and they talk about, their pasts and their circumstances of their parents, it's this honesty that really bonded them together and formed this new connection, and maybe has formed the alliance that could be really important later in the season. So I think, again, a win for honesty. Now, you could say that what happened to Bianca was maybe a loss for honesty. She was honest with Cedric about her losing her vote, and she still lost. But at the same time, I do think, she did do it like at the last minute. She withheld. And then when she finally, just dropped it right at the last minute, that's what screwed her over. And so I wonder maybe if she had been honest up front right away, if that would have been a better policy for her. Who knows? I'm not going to say that, honesty is always the best policy or that it's always going to, win the season. I just feel like this theme of being honesty and open has been highlighted a lot so far this season. And I think we could see that more moving forward. So, thoughts on Bianca. Give her a little bit of a send-off here. Big episode for Bianca. Not that surprised, but I enjoyed her in this episode. I felt she was fun. I'm thinking maybe even a complex personality 4. I don't think there was necessarily tone in her edit here. If it wasn't negative. I don't think it was positive. So I think we're looking at just a neutral, no tone for Bianca. Just, a normal edit, but quite a bit of her and quite a bit of her insight. I'm thinking either a complex 4 or a complex 3. I felt like it was a lot compared to previous episodes, especially for Bianca. And this episode felt like so much was told through Bianca's perspective about what was happening at council, that I felt like she was obviously the big narrator of this council from the new Siva perspective. So, complex 4 for Bianca. And thanks for playing, Bianca. I had a lot of fun. Bianca and Thomas in the jury house. Oh my gosh. Devastation. However, Bianca going out here does also feed into my thoughts on that Thomas is important to someone else. And Bianca was really only important to Thomas, but Thomas wasn't important, which is why we didn't see very much of Bianca, right? Thomas is important to probably one of those new Vula 4 in the future of the season. And Bianca was like the side thing to Thomas, but Thomas wasn't the important person in that group. So Bianca wasn't really important. Who is important? Eva. So that'll be interesting when we get to that. So let's hop up to the top of the list and talk about the first person and go down alphabetically to rate each person in how I believe their edit was this episode. Now, at the top of our list alphabetically is Cedric, who I feel like did not have a whole lot this episode. We obviously got a little bit of him talking to Bianca about that. We saw him talk to Say a little bit. I'm trying to think if he had anything before the challenge. Not really that I remember. Maybe I'm forgetting a scene, but I feel like this was a pretty low-key episode for Cedric. I'm thinking... Honestly, I feel like this was Cedric's smallest episode. Am I crazy? I'm thinking a middle of the road. I don't think there was tone here for Cedric. I think this was Cedric's toneless episode. Most toneless episode. Either middle of the road 3 or middle of the road 2. I don't know if it matters a whole lot. I might go middle of the road 2 because honestly, I was pretty shocked with how little we saw Cedric in this episode. You know what? Let's check. We have Rob's fact checker confessional charts. Now, I don't put a lot of weight into this. I know people have said this in the comments. I don't super rate my ratings based on confessional charts. In fact, I don't really even like confessional count. I usually prefer to use confessional time, amount, rather than count. But this is all we have available to us as of recording this video. So I just want to check in just to see if I'm proven wrong. Cedric with 2 confessionals. That feels about right. I just feel like there was not a whole lot of Cedric in this episode. So I feel justified in my middle of the road 2. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I'm feeling in the moment. Charity. Wow. Bad episode for Charity. Yeah, I mean, geez, so much negativity for no reason, really. I said during the episode that I was surprised that we got a scene about people talking negatively about Charity when we didn't see anything from new Vula post-challenge, right? Do we really need that scene of, new, whatever their tribe is called, new Lagi talking crap about Charity when we barely got anything from new Vula post-challenge? In fact, none, actually. And so that was an interesting choice to me, and that makes me think that things are not going to go so well for Charity moving forward. And we barely heard from her too. I kind of feel like this was an under the radar negative, and I might bump her up to under the radar 2. I don't think it was a 1. She did have a confessional, and she talked a little bit at the reward, but yeah, this was not super good for Charity. Chrissy had a better episode than she's ever had before. I'm thinking a complex personality, maybe a complex personality 3 on Chrissy. We heard quite a bit from her. We heard her gripes with Say. We heard, kind of who she wants to vote out. This was a Chrissy's best episode for sure. I don't think there was tone. I will say in the great Chrissy versus Say argument, I kind of am on Say's side. I kind of think, Say didn't handle the situation great either, but I kind of think that, like, hey, if Say wants to sit out, what's the big deal? Like, maybe Say was being, not a good sport about it, and that's why Chrissy was upset. I don't know. But I think Say was right. I don't know. But I don't necessarily think that was negative tone for Chrissy, so I think we're going to go with a neutral complex here. David keeps getting these shimmering, shining edit scenes every episode. He had this big, moment drinking the milk. I think that was it. I think we pretty much only got the milk scene from David this episode, but I still think it was something. I gotta decide, do I think it was complex or middle of the road? I think maybe middle of the road. I don't think it was super complex personality from David this episode. I'm feeling like maybe a middle of the road 3 or even a middle of the road positive 3. I think maybe just middle of the road 3. Oops. How did this happen? Okay, there we go. Yeah, I think that's right. Right? Middle of the road 3 here on David. I feel like it was the least tone we've had of him. Yeah, that's a tough one, but that's my thoughts right now. And David, this episode is difficult to judge, but maybe I'll change it later. Now we get to a big one. Eva, holy smokes! We gave Joe an OTTPP in the first episode. I'm kind of thinking Eva gets it again. Was this not so positive for Eva? Maybe complex, but this felt even more over the top than the first episode for Eva. This was so obviously so much. And obviously she was very complex as well. It could go either way. I'm thinking either OTTPP or CPPP on this episode. And I'm going to give it a 5. This was major episode for Eva. Huge. That's my thoughts right now. Joe. Now, Joe is very divisive this episode. I've looked at what a few other people were saying about Joe this episode because, guys, last week I said something that I'm gonna have to eat my words and take it back. I said, if you get the goose egg, you're out of contention. You can't win. Joe, goose egg. That's terrible. Did not see that coming, especially in this episode. That is a shock. So, that hurts. That hurts for my Joe number 1 ranking. However, I still feel like this was a decent episode for Joe. We still saw quite a bit of him. We saw his backstory. We saw of his parents. We saw his connection with Eva. I've seen a lot of people go back and forth, either OTT or middle of the road for Joe in this episode. For me, I feel like I was stunned at how little we did get from Joe. But we did get the backstory of the parents, which I was going to give him middle of the road. Okay, I'm going to say I came in here thinking I was going to give Joe middle of the road. But we did get the backstory with the parents. And that, I feel like that is enough to give complex personality, no? Or at least, or more. So maybe it is OTT. Maybe it is, because I don't really want to give him a complex personality rating this episode. He got 0 confessionals. But I kind of think OTTP. But like a 2. Either an OTT 2 or middle of the road 4 is my thoughts. Because there was like a lot of Joe, but not much substance because there was no confessionals. So, I don't know. I could go back and forth there. Let me hear your thoughts in the comments on what you think Joe's rating this episode should be, because I'm really, really conflicted on it. Because 0 confessionals is so strange, and yet there was still so much of him in the episode on screen, and so I don't know. That's a really difficult one. We're gonna move on. Camilla, good episode for Camilla. I'm feeling another complex personality positive 5, not 5, but complex personality positive. Listen, there's a lot of positive rating in this episode. This was a very positive episode for a lot of people. Especially the New Vula tribe. I felt like we got so much positivity radiating from that tribe this episode. I'm feeling complex personality 3, positive 3 on this episode for Camilla. Kyle, I'm kind of feeling the same. I'm trying to think, was Kyle positive? Because we did not get the backstory segment from Kyle. He was there, he was present, he pitched in. We did get some of Kyle. I don't think that Kyle was absent from the episode. But I don't know. I don't know if it was positive. I'll give him complex, though. I'll give him complex maybe 2, honestly. Because I feel like we didn't have to get very much of the Vula tribe, even though I feel like the Vula tribe was set up to be so important. This episode, I feel like they didn't get a lot of screen time in the New Vula, but I think it set up New Vula for getting a lot of screen time later. You know what I'm saying? So that's my thoughts on Kyle right now. Mary, either under the radar or middle of the road for Mary here. She only gets 1 confessional, which was very substanceless. She had the beef with, with Say on the mat. Is that something does that bump her up to middle of the road? I guess we'll give her a middle of the road. Middle of the road 2. Yeah. I think that's accurate. Mitch. Low-key episode for Mitch. Not a whole lot from him. I'm kind of thinking the same thing, honestly. Middle of the road, too. I don't think a ton of tone here for Mitch. We saw him against Say with Chrissy a little bit, but we heard more from Chrissy than we had heard from Mitch. Yeah, that's how I feel, I think. Yeah. Say. Say's edit. What happened? We were on such a roll where I had such a great observation that we went from episode 1, negative for Say, negative tone. Episode 2, mixed tone. Episode 3, neutral tone. Episode 4, positive tone. Say was on such an upswing, and now back down the rock bottom for Say with a very negative episode. I think I'm thinking over the top negative, but like a 3 for Say this episode. Not like a ton of screen time for Say, but I just felt like she was such an over the top negative character, just like being painted very negatively, people talking crap about her. And like I said, I'm kind of on Say's side here. I kind of agree with what Say was saying, you know what I'm saying? But I do think like the way it was framed was not good for Say. Yeah, so I'm thinking OTT -3 for Say. Shaheen. Whew. Bump up episode for Shaheen. We're looking at a positive rating for Shaheen. Yeah, I'm thinking a complex personality +3 for Shaheen. I feel like we get his backstory. It was a positive moment. Very positive for Shaheen. Yeah, I think that's got to be what it is. Maybe, I mean, you could argue it's a lower visibility, but I think 3 is fine. I felt like this was, like, Shaheen and Camilla were on, like, equal standing here in this episode. And then, like, Kyle and Joe were maybe a little bit lesser, a little bit more, like, we don't know what's going on with them as much. But, yeah, that's what I think. And finally, Star. Wow. Good episode for Star. I mean, who knew what positivity would be coming Star's way? I'm thinking, boom, guess what? Same rating, I think. Maybe a 2. You know what? Listen, let's check the freaking confessional charts. Why not? Let's see what it's like. Star got 2 confessionals. And let's take a look. Where is Shaheen? Shaheen also got 2. Camilla got 3. Okay, whatever. That doesn't tell me anything. I really need the confessional time span, which is way more important. I actually kind of think maybe a 2. Because we didn't hear, I don't think, from Star at all, other than the one segment with Eva, which was a meaty segment. Definitely complex personality positive, I would say, undoubtedly, for me. On Star this episode, either a 2 or 3. I'm going to give it a 2, but it could be a 3. Yeah, I'm not super sure. Could go either way, but an upswing. An upswing for Star. So that's my ratings right now. I might be wrong about some of these. Honestly, this was a weird episode. The edit of this episode was definitely unusual than what it normally is. So, with all that said, let's hop into the Contender Rankings to see how we're feeling. So, we have everything pulled up here for the Contender Rankings, updated a little bit to make it a little bit better. So, let's go into who is likely going to be winning or not winning this season. Now, this might be a hot take. I kind of think Charity is bumped down to the bottom spot. Kind of just because I want to try something different. I want to shake it up a little bit. Now, Charity did not get a goose egg at any point. But this was so negative for Charity. People talking crap about her. They don't trust her. They don't anything. And so a big prediction is I think that Charity is going out soon. You know what? I'm gonna give my predictions for next week at the end. So we'll save that segment, but rough for Charity. Honestly, I feel like these two probably stay the same. Chrissy, then Star. Chrissy got a little bit more this episode. I think that Chrissy is like just not a super big factor. Maybe we get an under the radar Erica type edit. I don't know if it's as positive as Erica, but it's pretty low visibility. So, maybe there's upswing there, but I don't see it. Star, I also think maybe there's upswing. I can see this thing with Eva, maybe pulling her forward in the game a little bit further than you might expect, but still kind of not super high in the ratings. Cedric is staying put. I do not see the winner edit for Cedric more than those other three, but still not very much. Obviously, we lost Bianca, who was a pretty low rating, so that makes a lot of sense. So that doesn't change things too badly on that front. But Cedric does end up a little bit lower in the overall charts. I don't see it for Cedric. I think Mitch is staying put as well. Just not a whole lot of Mitch. It's very positive, but not a whole lot. I could see Mitch maybe differently. Now, I'd say the 4 below Mitch. All people that feel like they could be going out soon. I would say especially Cedric, Star, and Charity. Mitch does not give me that. I think Mitch might be going far in the season. He has been painted very positively. I could see Mitch making the finale. I could see Mitch being a losing finalist. But not a lot of visibility. But it kind of gives it doesn't super give winner to me. Not a whole lot for Mitch here. I'm going to change this. I'm bumping Say down one. Because the negativity here was quite a bit. I don't really see Say winning. But she still is such a big character. Maybe she's a villain winner. Maybe she's going to prove the haters wrong. She's above Mitch for the moment, but I could see Mitch surpassing her if Mitch gets a bigger episode sometime soon. But yeah, it's not looking great for Say at the moment. Mary is, climbing. She goes up a little bit. Not a great episode for Mary. This is more so, it was just a bad episode for Say. But I still don't see it. I still don't see the Mary winner edit. Hey, Mary supporters rejoice. She got bumped up to 7th. But I gotta say, there's a big gap between 7 and 6 for me. I still don't really super see the winner edit for Mary. I still think that people are just like Mary. But in terms of edit, I don't know. I don't know. It's not impossible. And I would say I have not ruled anyone out. Really, other than maybe the bottom 3. I think the bottom 3, you can mostly rule them out. I would say the people below, below 6th place are like, probably not at this point, but who knows? And then the top 6 are like, these are all totally in contention. Very possible. So, I think Mary, maybe, but not a whole lot of odds. I think I'm keeping Kyle in 6. Sorry, Kyle. I don't know. I don't super see it for Kyle. I feel like often in these segments of like personal content story segments, like we got the humble traits segment, and then of course we got the parent backstory segment this time. Kyle has felt like one of the lesser important people in both those segments. He gets visibility and he does get positivity, but it just doesn't feel like there's as much meat to Kyle's story so far as there is to other people. I could see Kyle maybe getting clipped at some point. I've been predicting that he could go out early in the past, but I will say I am seeing it for Kyle. Kyle could win. I would not be surprised at all if Kyle wins this season. I just don't see it as much as the top 5, who just feel like they have a little bit more substance to their edit than Kyle does for me at the moment. But he's got the visibility, he's got the positivity, the tone, and a decent enough story that I could definitely see it. In 5th place, this is tough. Because these top 5 are all so much contenders. I'm thinking I'm going to put David in 5th place. And this is not a knock on David's edit. It's just, I just don't feel like David's going to win. In my bones, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it will happen to me. But he has a great edit. And I just feel more strongly about like the kind of levelness maybe of some of these other edits than David, who has been so over the top positive, and you hear his story and yada yada. Listen, David wins this season. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. But David gets 0 votes at the end. Also not surprised. David, goes out at any other point, really. I'm not that surprised. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't see it. I just don't. Now, these next 4 are tough because I did feel good about putting the Dave in the 5th spot. These next 4 are really interesting. I'm doing a brash move. That I didn't expect to do, but I'm doing it anyways. I'm putting Eva at 4 for now. I still also don't super know if Eva's going to win. I do think that Eva is kind of giving the journey story. She's kind of giving, Andy or Emily, or I don't know who that would be in 46. I don't even know who that would be. But yeah, kind of giving like that, obviously she didn't like blow up like Andy did necessarily, but kind of giving it like that emotional heart of the season story, but maybe not going to win. And I still think that like Eva definitely gets the edit she's getting whether she wins or not, right? I mean, she could go out next. She could be like a Banu. I wouldn't be that surprised. I mean, she's just such a character and has had so many positive moments. Yeah. So Eva's at 4 right now, but definitely a strong contender. Now, this is where things go crazy, guys. I'm about to pull a crazy move. And last week I said psych, but it's not a psych anymore. Boom. I think I'm bumping Joe from my top spot. Joe got the goose egg. Not Joe. Anyone else. Don't give Joe the goose egg. Please. My king. What happened? The goose egg? For Joe? You're kidding me. You're pulling my leg. You're yanking my chain here. I can't believe it. Now, I'm gonna have to eat my words a little bit. I'm gonna have to eat some stuff because I said you get the goose egg, you're going to the bottom of the list. You're not gonna win. I've changed my mind. Hey, I can change my mind. I had this theory that I was cooking that the goose egg meant you were out of qualification, but I have to disagree with that now because hey, I mean, Erica got a ton of goose eggs and she won. So, I mean, hey, who knows? New era, anything's possible. Joe, for this week, I think I have to bump him out of my top spot because of the goose egg. I just feel like I would not feel justified to leave him at number 1 with the goose egg. Now, could he go back to number 1? Absolutely. I'm very interested to see what his edit is like next episode. But I said last week that I was starting to think that maybe this relationship is more focused on Eva than it is on Joe. And I feel like Joe's kind of falling into the background where we're hearing more from Eva. We're hearing more from Shaheen. And Joe is kind of just the guy that's allied with both of them. And we're not hearing as much from him personally. And that is hurting Joe's chances for me. And I still think that Joe could win. And I still believe him. And I still hope that Joe wins. But I think that edit-wise, he's sunken a bit, and I hope that he comes back. I hope we get a good Joe episode. It's really going to depend on what we get from Joe next episode and the episode after that. We need to start getting some bump up on Joe's edit. Otherwise, the visibility is just a little bit low. Now, that could be good, right? Maybe we're going to see a lot of Joe later, and that's why. But I'm starting to think that maybe those people that were thinking that Joe will sacrifice himself for Eva were maybe right. And I think that might have happened this episode in some ways. So I'm not out on Joe, but he's there. Which means I'm putting Shaheen at 2. Shaheen's going back up to 2. I bumped it down to 5. He's come back. This was, again, a great swing back episode for Shaheen, just like he had in the first episode, or in episode 2 after episode 1. Positivity, telling his story, being a narrator. We heard from Shaheen talk about Thomas. We heard Shaheen say that Thomas was the number 1 ally. I don't know if that was true. And we did not even hear from Joe talking about it, which makes me think that Shaheen is maybe the bigger character here, and I think that Shaheen maybe this is just the tone that Shaheen needed for his edit to bump him up to go in the distance and potentially winning this season. And that means I'm putting Camilla at my number 1 spot for this week. Camilla has just had such a good edit so far. I was high on her in the preseason. I was high on her in episode 1. I put it down a little bit just because it was so high in the California Girls. But obviously she went up last episode. And this episode, I think I got to put it up to the number 1 spot. She's had such a good edit, such a good story. She really is feeling like she is going to go the distance to me. She's such a main character of the season so far. And yeah, that is my feelings on Camilla. This is a little bit of like a mental like block, a little bit of a conflict here, whatever the term is, that I still am in on a Loggy winner, which is why 2, 3, and 4 are all really the only Loggy contenders left, because I still feel like Loggy is the important tribe to me. I know there's been a big battle in the Edgic community on Siva winner versus Loggy winner. I still lean Loggy, but I gotta put Camilla number 1 because she's just had the best edit so far individually, in my opinion. And I feel like Shaheen and Joe and Eva have all had holes in their edit that make me nervous, but I'm interested to see where we go from here. I'm hoping that Shaheen or Joe get some moments moving forward that maybe bump either of them up to the top spot, or Eva as well. I think any of them could be a top contender. It's just so hard to rectify, with someone like Eva. They're going to get that edit no matter what, whether they win or not. So it's so hard to rectify, like, are they the winner or not? This was my conflict with Andy last season, was like, for so much of the season, I thought Andy's not going to win. He's just a big character. And then we start getting to the point that I was like, well, maybe Andy just does win. Like, maybe Andy does win, and that's why he's getting the edit. Like, it's not like that changes anything. And so it's really hard when you have that character with the big personality and a lot of stuff going on to predict. So that's my thoughts. I'm going to put that in my contender rankings. That is what our chart is looking like for the week. And then we will hop into predictions. I'm going to give some predictions about what I think is going to happen in the Mergatory week and stuff moving forward. To me, my main prediction, here are my main predictions for the season moving forward. I think we are going to get a alliance of 6 of Camilla, Kyle, and David from Siva, and Joe, Shaheen, and Eva from Loggy. They're going to combine and form a super alliance that I think is going to run the season, and I think the winner's probably from that group of 6. I don't really see it for anyone else at this point. I think we are being set up for a Charity boot as the first Mergatory boot. There's been so much negativity. They specifically showcased negativity this episode against Charity. I just think it's not looking good for her, and I just feel like this has got to be coming to a head soon, which is why we are taking time to talk about it. So my prediction is Charity is that Mergatory boot. And my prediction for the week after, I think that Star is giving me big Sifu vibes from Survivor 45. I think that Star seems like a big personality, a really fun character that has been kind of under the radar. We haven't seen a whole lot of Star, and it's kind of giving me like, why are we not seeing so much? Because they're that final pre-juror that often gets under-edited. That's the vibe it's giving to me. I don't know how that happens. I don't know how we get there. And I do think this is an upswing episode for Star, and I could see Star maybe going the distance. Going a little bit farther, this connection with Eva. I think it's positive. It's not impossible, but if I have to make my predictions, I think the next boot is Charity, and the boot after that is Star. And those are definitely the top two people that I see as pre-juror edits right now. And then I think I can see pretty much everyone else being on the jury. I think everyone else has jury edits so far. Although I do think that Say could also be in trouble sometime in this Mergatory segment, because who's going to defend Say at this point? Only Cedric, I guess. But yeah, I think that we're going to get that alliance of 6 that is going to really dominate against other people. And I think it would be very wise for Siva to throw out one of their own. And obviously the one that they would throw out would be Charity. So that's my predictions moving forward. Loving the season so far. It's been such an emotional season. And there's been so much, depth to the relationships. It's been very fun. It's been a very interesting pre-merge that I have enjoyed. I think it's, the past few pre-merges have all been pretty great. The past, I think 47 and 45 both had really, really good pre-mergers. Like pre-merge, like stories and whatnot. 46, not so much, a little bit. But I think this is up there. I think this was a great pre-merge, and it was very exciting in a lot of ways, and had some really iconic moments. I think that we're going to see Thomas as an important character in the future, in the story of one of those 6 people that I talked about. And I think, that's my predictions for the moment. And, I'll be back next week with more predictions on episode 6 and Edgic analysis on how things are going and my winner contenders. This was a shake-up episode for me a little bit, but I'm interested. So I got Bianca right. So let's see if I'm right about Charity being the boot next week and Star being the boot after that. I don't know. Could be wrong, but I can see it. I could definitely see it. So that's it. I have been North. Thank you all so much for watching. Please, if you enjoyed, leave a comment below. I really appreciate the engagement. I love responding to comments and talking this out. I have changed my ratings based on what people's input have been. So I would love to hear what your input is, so I can make my ratings as community accurate as possible. And it's been a blast. I've been North, and I will see you all next time. Stay frosty.